This is an item analysis of your first attempts for the Module 1 assessment. There were, statistically speaking, the Blackboard analysis algorithms, the statistical routines in Blackboard said, based on the outcomes from student answers, that there were 8 easy questions and 11 medium questions, but no hard questions. The average score was a 4.1 out of a possible 5. There were some cases where it could not calculate based on whether or not discrimination for answer choices. I don't think Blackboard takes into account mastery learning, so when students get everything right, they basically cannot calculate, you see. So what we're going to do, though, is focus on the questions where the greatest challenges were. So for the matching that was worth 3/4 of a point, you see the average score was 3/4 of a point. Everybody got it correct. And so Blackboard says it can't calculate whether or not that's a good question or a bad question. But we know that if everybody got it right, that's a good thing. So that's the goal of mastery learning. Toward the bottom of this listing is where we're going to focus. So we had a multiple choice question where the average score was a 0.05 out of a possible 1/4 of a point, 0.25. And it says, according to systems security practices, you do not need to concern yourself with the security status of a connected device or system. Rather, it is appropriate to focus exclusively on the single device or system of concern in all cases. And there are 4 answer choices. This statement is false, as a connected device or system can be exploited to extend the exposure to the single device or system. So one of the things we discussed in scenarios for Module 1 is that you have to look at, I think you may recall I said this is a course on systems security, systems being plural, not just singular, right? So instead of multiple systems, instead of a single system, we're talking about how you have to look at the population of systems and devices collectively, that the chain is only as strong as the weakest link. And so this statement would be false. We did have some answers at the bottom. So students also answered this statement is false, as no connected system can be effectively secured from the sum of all exposures between connected systems. So basically, I guess the meaning of this is related, but it's not as accurate a reason why the statement is false. So the first part of this statement is correct. The statement is false. But the idea that no connected system can be effectively secured, that's inaccurate. System security needs to be, the security of a single system is relevant. It does matter. And that's because each system in its own right can be appropriately secured so that the sum of exposures between connected systems is greatly reduced. The whole idea, so part of this statement is correct, that there are other systems, and essentially the thing that we want you to understand is that this answer choice is not really a good answer because it asserts that no connected system can be effectively secured. And that's just not true. If that were true, then we could basically all quit our jobs and go home. Are there any questions about this particular assessment item? Okay, the next item, true, false, an overlooked method. A fifth and most basic method of authentication that is often overlooked by many involves the use of certificates to validate a computer account. That is true. Certificates can validate computer accounts and often are used to validate computer accounts. That was one thing we'd called out, and there should be a reference to that in your study guide. Any questions about this item? Is everybody still there? Just checking to see.
Yes. Yeah, Dave, I'm still here.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we made an intentional effort to call out the idea that the term exploit is not the same as attack. An exposure is basically a gap in the defenses and security measures or controls of a system. An exploit is a strategy that's designed to take advantage of a specific exposure, but the exploit may or may not be used. An attack is when the exploit is actually used against that specific exposure. So the two terms are not synonymous. They do not mean the same thing. The exposure means you're vulnerable. An exploit means, oh, there's something that somebody has already figured out how to take advantage of that exposure, but someone actually using that method to exploit the exposure in an active attack may or may not have occurred. An attack is action-oriented. An exploit is like plan. It's centered on the plan that you use to exploit. So the word exploit means basically attack plan, if that's another way to look at it. I hope that helps. I just want you to understand that exploit, a lot of people throw those two terms around very loosely, and that can be a source of great confusion for many people. Okay? Any questions about this item? Any questions? Okay.
Sorry, I was late.
Say again?
Sorry, I came in late.
No, that's
I didn't realize it past 3.
well, I'm glad you could join us. I regret that I thought we had already posted something about an item analysis for your first attempt on the Module 1 assessment, and we want to make sure you have that on hand. So that's why we're doing this now. We'll push it out there as soon as we finish. The other item analysis from our last session, by the way, is here inside in the resources folder. Right now it's a link. As soon as YouTube finishes processing it, basically you can just click this and it'll launch. And then I'll have a similar link in the Module 1 folder and resources for this item assessment. So all you have to do is look at the first 15 minutes or so of the video that you'll see in resources. I'll park it right here at the top, okay? If that helps. And then, all right, let's go back and dial this up again. Whoops, it's Module 1 we were on. That would have been confusing, huh? Start to review the other ones. All right. Okay, an ironic truth. This is a true false item. Even though an exploit is credible, it is ironic that defending against a potential attack when no valid threat is present actually wastes resources that could be used to cover other exposures. This statement is true. So even when an exploit is credible, even when an attack, a potential attack is possible, if there is no threat present, see, that's part of the risk analysis component we investigated in module 1. So it's multifaceted. It's not as simple as, oh, you have an exposure. Oh, there's an exploit out there, a method to attack that exposure. Oh, so it's possible that that attack could be used against the exposure. It really doesn't matter unless there's a threat. So if your organization spends a great deal of time and energy and resources defending against an attack when there's no real presence, when there's no real threat that's valid. A good example of this would be an isolated internal private non-routable network. You would not necessarily want to, you might have all sorts of exposures on systems inside a private non-routable internal network. But if the valid threat is only active on the public internet, then it makes no sense to add sophisticated firewalls on the internal networks. Does that make sense? As an example, hopefully. Yes, no, maybe. Okay. Here is a true-false question that also average score was low. One practical method to ensure system security is to faithfully practice vigilance with respect to updates. Those who create software, hardware, and operating systems incur great expense to offer updates to resolve potential issues. Ignoring or delaying any of these as a general practice is ill-advised. A lot of times this stuff will come up and it'll say, oh, there's an optional update. And I went to the painstaking level of getting like almost melodramatic in some of our sessions. And I said, let me tell you, if they go to the trouble to craft a fix and they say it's optional, they just don't want to look bad. They don't want you to panic. They don't want to say that it's a terrible thing. But the fact is, any update is expensive to create. Think about why they would incur that expense. They're going to say that it's optional because the odds are pretty good. A large segment of the population is not immediately exposed, so they don't want to panic. They don't want to incite a panic. But that's a false sense of security, and people all the time get pop-ups in the lower corner here that talk about updates. And what do we tend to do as a human? No, I don't want to do it now. I don't want to lose my productivity. That is an ill-advised practice. I don't care how an update, I don't care if it says, oh, this is going to add new features. They don't give away free features. I don't know if your mom ever shared with you that there is no such thing as a freebie, right? There's no free lunch. So if they're giving away free features, you got to ask yourself what's really going on. Anything that's an update that's advertised, load it right away. It's a bad problem. And a lot of people just don't get that. So anyway, that's another item. Right, so we're going to run these multiple choice items up to here, from here to here. And then we're going to skip because the other multiple choice items were worth 1/4 of a point, and most everyone got these correct. If anyone wants me to go over some of these, that's fine. But then we'll go ahead and roll up to where we have some multiple answers where the score was, and the ordering where the scores were low. Any questions so far? Okay, multiple. Was that a question?
Oh no, I would say no, no questions from me.
Thank you. According to subject matter experts, what is the value of risk assessment? The primary value of risk assessment is that and the answer that was best to select reads, translates operational security interests into financial and administrative terms the stakeholders can use to make informed decisions. So part of the process for risk analysis or risk assessment, and it's a component of systems security management, is that a formal analysis is conducted based on the exposures and the threats, what the impact of a system would be, the likelihood of occurrence, and the cost if the risk actually, if the exploit was actually used and an attack actually occurred. And what we do is translate into dollars and cents in operational security interests. Okay, so we'll be down for 3 days. You won't be able to produce anything. If you can't take customer orders for 3 days, the cost for an average day of customer orders is $25,000 per day on just 2 of the websites we have. It's an additional $50,000 per day through our app. So if they're hitting the websites, that's 25 grand a day. If they're using the app, if somebody attacks this back end and we can't post orders, it's $75,000 a day times 3 days. It's $225,000. And the likelihood of this occurring in our neighborhood is high. Based on what we've seen in trends, it's likely to happen within a year. My question to you is, can you afford to do without $225,000 in revenue in the next 9 to 12 months? Or can we spend $5,000 to upgrade our firewall? Right? That's what risk management does. Okay. We had some students who chose the other possibilities. Reduces the risk of an attack by eliminating the cost and related impact of a complementary loss. Oh no, risk assessment doesn't eliminate the cost. It brings sharp relief and focus to the cost, but it doesn't eliminate the cost. That's why this answer choice is not a good one. Other students answered this one. Reduces the risk of an attack by eliminating a threat capable of performing a custom exploit using a complementary exposure. So in this case, we're eliminating the cost. In the other case, we're eliminating the threat. No, we can't eliminate either. You want to be informed of the threat so that you can take action. But basically, if risk management did this or it did that, no one would ever have to think twice about investing in cybersecurity infrastructure and services. The reality is, it's not that technical people have a hard time explaining to folks how this is a given. Most people just, when you start going through the technical details about how this is a certainty and the cost or the threat is a certainty, what we want to do is frame the likelihood and cost in terms of the operational interests of the organization. And that's a lot harder to ignore. The people that you're supporting in systems security are not technical system security people. They are financial and administrative people. And the truth is, there is no perfect silver bullet. You can't, risk management doesn't mean you absolutely will implement a security control and it's a silver bullet and it will absolutely eliminate the cost or absolutely eliminate the threat. What we want to do is reduce the likelihood, but there is no perfect world. So because this is an absolute term or a more extreme term, that's why those aren't good choices. Does anyone have any questions about this item? Okay. A man trap. A man trap is an example of physical security because it literally traps a man in a physical trap. It is not access control in the sense that we're talking about for a system. I mean, it does control physical access, but it's an element of system security more so than access control. Has more to do with the rights and privileges or permissions, the access rights and permissions assigned to file system objects. So access control has to do with the whole RBAC thing. Does that make sense? You could say access control is a part of IAM. If this question read, such and such is an example, is what type of IAM measure or whatever, then access control would be the correct answer. Any question? I'm going to keep moving unless I hear something. So, okay. This is multiple choice. One important conclusion regarding biometric authentication measures is that they are more effective when methods are combined. They do not cost less than standard authentication methods. Use of a password is free. A retina scanner for your eyeball or a fingerprint scanner has a definite cost to it. And it costs a lot more than using a free password. They're not simple or easy to implement. And it's very difficult to get 100% accuracy. Those are the things that are true about biometrics. Any questions about this item? Okay. Last item we'll review from this end. Unless you want me to keep going all the way up. If anyone wants me to just keep reviewing all of these all the way straight up, I can do that. This is a multiple choice item. One notorious default setting that compromises effective security when left unchanged concerns network shares. So when I go to share something, the everyone permission is the default setting. If it's left unchanged, this is horrific. We did have some students that chose NetBIOS over TCP/IP. If the question read, when left unchanged concerns use of an outdated network protocol, then NetBIOS over TCP/IP would be a good choice. But the question here concerns network shares. Another student answered this one, and it says, enables a malicious actor to connect to a network port even when a service is not running. This statement is false. If a service is not running, the port is not even open, and a malicious actor is incapable of connecting. The only way an actor can connect across the network on a specific port is only when a service is running and listening. If the service is not running and listening, there are no default settings or any intentional settings that will allow a malicious actor to connect. There's nothing to connect to. There's no available port that's in an active status that's listening. Does that make sense? I hope so. Okay. So if we roll past these items, because most everybody got these correct, this matching item was a low score, I think. Because I think matching is supposed to be a half a point. And then ordering and multiple answers. So let's look at this question. Match the practical systems measure with, did everybody get it correct? No, everybody got it correct. Okay. No, we're good. Oh, I'm glad to see that. So login account validation has to do with authentication, permissions and access rights has to do with authorization, and system auditing and logs has to do with accountability. Outstanding. Never mind. That was a good one. Multiple answer. This one should have been a 5. This one should have been a 5. And that one should have been a 5. So let's see what's going on with these. Multiple answer, proper risk assessment. When risk is measured properly, the following is a likely outcome. The potential impact of a successful attack is used to inform decisions. So that gets back to the scenario we talked about in the previous item. The importance of a digital resource and its related loss are considered. That's the very heart or beginning of the risk management process. Okay, you have an exposure, you have an exploit that will take advantage of that exposure. Now you have a threat in the area. How important is that digital resource? If it's your file server where all the credit card numbers are stored, wow, that's important. That's part of the risk analysis or risk assessment, proper one anyway. A proper one is going to look and see, okay, so if that happens on this system, what's the impact, right? And it also helps better use of limited resources and countermeasures for credible threats. So if you don't have an actor, if you don't have an active threat in the scenario in the first place, it's not a credible threat, then proper risk assessment is going to take that into account. This last item was a bogus statement. Users are more comfortable and accepting of common risks. So every student, what we should see is that every student chose this one, and this one. And instead, 4 students chose this answer. 3 students chose this answer. And 4 students chose this answer. Nobody was tricked by this answer. But everybody should have selected each of these. Any questions about this multiple answer item? Can I hear from someone just to make sure we're still connected?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here too.
Thank you. Okay, 2 more and then we're done, unless you'd like to review some of the other items explicitly. All right, so multiple answer. Those who are tasked, so this is a constant focus. Those who are tasked with systems, security responsibilities, and authentic scenarios insist that whenever a review of system security begins, it is most helpful to maintain a constant focus on these basic concepts. exposures and exploits. The other two items, countermeasures and impact and cost, were never part of the operational tenets that we reviewed in class, and it's not stated either in the book or in the study guides. So countermeasures are important, but you don't think about them all the time. Impacts and costs, you think about those during risk analysis or risk assessments, but not all the time. The idea here is you're going to be thinking about these things all the time. Constant focus means there's never going to be a time where I look at system security where I'm not first considering, okay, how am I exposed? Okay, are there exploits that will take advantage of that exposure? Pure and simple. Does anyone have any questions about this multiple answer question? Alrighty, let's look at the last one. It's an ordering question. It says, when implementing RBAC, certain tasks are performed in a given order. For each task shown below, select the number that correctly indicates precisely in the order when it is performed. For example, suppose the proper order for getting dressed each morning was pull on your underwear, step into and pull up your pants, insert tool or foot into shoe and fasten, and then suppose the order displayed the following tasks: step into pull up pants, insert foot into shoe and fasten, pull on underwear. For the first task display, so I'm just explaining what's expected, right? So the answer order, this was the first answer that was displayed. By the way, I went to the trouble of explaining the expectation of ordering because we found out that there was a bug on Blackboard when it came to ordering items. For a time, you could set this up and it wouldn't score correctly. So if you find that what you have on your screen differs from what you're seeing on this screen, send me a screenshot. Once again, we found out that ordering items were barfed for a time on Blackboard and they did not score properly. And we had cases where students had the correct order on their screen, but they were denied credit for it. So I want you to check your item to make sure it's been scored properly. The first one that displayed is a user account or subject is added to the group. That's actually the third step. The first step is to create a user or security group to represent a role in generic terms, right? And the second step is access rights are configured for the group. The third one is the user account or subject is added to the group. The fourth step is as assigned roles change, group membership is adjusted. That's the fourth and last step. So it's easy to just change assignments to groups, right? Any questions? Now this is slightly different than the RBAC that we just did on Module 2. The context is a little different. In this one, it's talking about it's a broader view of RBAC, and it includes how to maintain it as role assignments change. The one that we had in Module 2 just now referred to the steps that you performed in the solution to actually implement your own RBAC, and so the wording was slightly different, but the same tasks should have tracked in the same order, basically. Does anybody have any questions about the order of tasks to complete RBAC? Either conceptually or on a system directly. Anyone? Going once, going twice. Does anyone want to see? All right, so everybody got this correct. So we don't really need to review this one. Does anyone want to see these items down here? The three that were nearly perfect. It's 10 minutes to 4. We have enough time to cover these three if you want to.
Okay.
Okay, we'll start with this one. This is a multiple choice question. Among the greatest fallacies or false ideas about system security that remain entrenched in the minds of those who use, and even for many who support the systems, is the belief that a proper firewall will protect a system from all network exploits. Yeah, that's actually very prevalent, even for IT people. Oh, current antivirus is sufficient. That's true of even IT staff. Malicious actors can connect to a system that has no firewall. Yeah, that's also a false idea. We just said unless a service is running, even if you don't have a firewall, a malicious actor isn't going to be able to connect. Firewalls help protect, but the lack of them doesn't mean that you're a sitting duck. It just means they'll have a lot easier time connecting, and so that's over dependence on the idea of a firewall, right? And then the last one, systems defaults provide adequate security. So system defaults do not provide adequate security unless you work in Linux. If you work with Linux, or actually if you work with a Mac, the system defaults for Macs are actually pretty decent, except that when you turn on a brand new Mac, it sets up the first user as a privileged user, and that's also another glaring default. That's a problem, right? So that's another default. When a new system is set up in the minds of people who use it and the people who support it, everybody sets up that first account, and what privilege does it have? Administrator. And what do people do with it? They get on the web, they do email, they do messaging and web apps, online apps. No, that's a default that shouldn't happen. The first account that should be set up should be hardwired so that every user, every IT support person goes, hey, now that we have the maintenance or support account configured, let's set up something for you to use every day. Everybody has that, right? On your cumulative exam, you can all expect a huge question worth lots of points on your cumulative exam about what I just discussed. Yes? I hope so. Hope everybody's got that. All right, here we go. The worst of all the default settings and configurations that can expose a system, the one default that creates the greatest concern by far is, I was just talking about it, the first account security hole. Firewalls are disabled by users so that sometimes their gaming networks and stuff like that will work, but it's not the biggest, baddest problem. The biggest, baddest problem on the planet is that first account that's set up, and it's a gaping security hole if it's used for anything other than administrative account maintenance, administrative systems maintenance. Last item, CIA essentials. According to subject matter experts, what primary methods are used to provide the essentials for effective CIA? So confidentiality, integrity, and availability are protected by authentication, authorization, and accountability. Now we've extended that idea a little further, but in classical terms, the subject matter experts have always said that this is like the first leg of a three-legged bar stool, AAA, and then like risk management, and then there's one other. Since the beginning of time, people have always thought that AAA was absolutely essential for effective CIA. And but that didn't mean that other things weren't important. Any questions about this? Now, I have said, and the federal government has since said, that you can't have effective systems security, data security, without role-based access control, effective identity management, right? So if you don't have two-factor authentication, if you want to have data security, you have to have two-factor authentication, RBAC, and encryption. And if you lack any of those, you're kind of a sitting duck when it comes to data security, but that's just security where data is concerned. It's a breakout of it's basically a more granular look at the big view. So module 1 had a lot to do with the theory and the concepts, the broad perspective about what essential system security is all about. Module 2, 3, and 4 are all going to be about applying it and getting into the weeds. Any questions on this last item before we clear today?
No question from me.
Okay, well, I'm going to stop sharing and stop recording. I'll go ahead and post this item analysis in module 1. Then I'll post the retakes for assessments. I'll post the retakes for the module assessments tomorrow morning. And if you can get the retakes done by the next class, then I'll post the exam, and we won't have class on Monday, so you can take the exam on Monday. Okay?
Okay.
Now, when you take the retakes, if everybody can get the retakes done by noon on Monday, I'll do a third item analysis on the retakes for each of the assessments. So hopefully the scores will be a lot higher. There'll be fewer mistakes. We'll have fewer items, but I'll go over module 1, module 2, the retake items that were the most problematic. I'll post that recording. You can have a final look at that. And then at 3 p.m., I'm going to hide these resources. So when we go into exam conditions, you'll have through 11:59 p.m. to complete the 90-minute assessment, the 90-minute exam. You won't have access to module 1 or module 2 resources. The only thing you'll see on your screen is the cumulative exams. So what am I saying? You don't have to take the exam precisely at 3, but I'll send you a link for the retake assessments that are out on YouTube. And when we hit 3 p.m. in the afternoon, I'm going to send a final reminder that says, hey, this is your last chance to look at any resources or references. Exam conditions go into effect, and the only thing you'll see is this cumulative exams link. And then you'll have until 11:59 p.m. Any questions?
Yes, I didn't hear when you said that you was going to have the cumulative exams posted.
Say again?
Can you repeat when the exams will be posted?
So the retake assessments will be posted tomorrow morning, early. And you'll have until 3 p.m. Monday to do those. It would be good if you could get them done by noon, because I'd like to do another item analysis. If everybody can get them done by noon, I can look and see if there were any items on the retakes that were a problem. I can post a quick analysis, just a recording, right? At 3 p.m., you know what, now that I think about it, for an exam, you should have 24 hours I'm thinking about 3 p.m. to midnight in case you're working, you have a late shift, you get home. How does 3 p.m. to 3 p.m. sound? 3 p.m. Monday through 3 p.m. Tuesday, you have a 24-hour window to complete the 90-minute exam. Is that fair?
Yes.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. All right. All right then.